Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back. Jesus loves you. So I want to address my previous statements about Joshua and the World Cup. Yes, I have said that if the World Cup happened on June 11th, that I would be done with the Joshua thing. A few things. First of all, I did not know that the World Cup was 39 days. I don't follow soccer. I essentially have never watched soccer. So I didn't know that it was a process. I thought it was literally one game on June 11th and that was it. So logically, if June 11th happened and there was that game, then obviously Joshua would be done. His prophecy would be over, right? But I learned that the World Cup is 39 days, and the World Cup is actually not given until the last day, which is, I believe, on July 17th. So for me, that opens up a possibility that perhaps the games will start but not finish. Technically, the World Cup will not be given until the end of the games. Now, you might think that's pushing the can down the road, that's giving Joshua too much leeway. You may think Joshua's a false prophet, and that's okay. You're allowed to think that. You might be right. I could be wrong. I'm not even necessarily saying what I'm just keeping an open mind to it because the days haven't passed yet. So from the beginning with Joshua, I have been up in the air. I've been open to what he says and claims that God told him. I am not into prophets. I don't believe in any other prophet. Period. Do I believe Joshua is a prophet? I don't know. I am open to the idea that potentially God and Jesus spoke to him and gave him this message, sort of like a very unique situation for the end times. There is that verse that says he will warn his prophets. So at this point, we're still in the window for me. And I am open to this actually happening, that the rapture could happen within the next month before July 17th. That seems very plausible and possible. So, in that one video, Joshua does say that God would cut it short. First, he says that God told him that there would be no World Cup. Then he said, right after that, I'm going to cut it short. Now, was Joshua talking about himself, saying that he's going to cut short what he's saying? That's possible. Or was he saying that God said he was going to cut the World Cup short? I do realize that he explicitly said there would be no World Cup, which probably in his mind and in our mind for sure meant that it wouldn't even start. We would be raptured before or on July 11th. However, perhaps there's something else at play here. I have an open mind on this stuff. I'm not saying you have to have an open mind. If you're done with Joshua, totally cool. I totally understand. It's all good. But there was a post that somebody put up, and it was a screenshot of Joshua saying that God would cut short the World Cup. Now, I can't verify that. It's the first time I've ever heard him say it other than that video. So this is where I'm at, guys. People have been saying, I saw one comment saying that I was lying. Like I was literally lying because I said I would be done with Joshua on July 11th, and now I'm changing my story. Well, that's not a lie. That's just I changed my mind, right? Anytime I've said things about Joshua, it's always been with a grain of salt, right? I've constantly said, hey, you know what? If this date passes, I'm probably done with Joshua. But if new information comes out, then I would be open to it, right? I may not always say that. Sometimes I might just say, I'm done with Joshua after this. But again, for me, it was always at least until the World Cup. That is the cutoff day. So, July 17th, if the World Cup is given out, if the trophy of the World Cup is given out, and there's no rapture, and there's no tribulation start, then obviously Joshua's prophecy was not from God. He either made it up or he heard it from a demon, which I am open to both those possibilities. You guys know. I mean, I'm so open-minded, my brain's falling out, they say, right? This is where I'm at with Joshua. And I get it where people say, like, well, why? For me, every explanation that he's given so far makes sense to me. And like I said, no other prophet makes sense to me. None of them. I listen to them. I've heard them. I don't believe in prophets. What they're saying, it could or couldn't be true. I'm not interested. For some reason, the Joshua thing is still sticking. Now, I understand people just say, well, you're just deluded and you're in a cult. That's a bit of an emotional reaction. Now, I understand that may be the case in some people's situation. But honestly speaking, do you really think that I'm in a cult? Right? I've never said Joshua's 100% prophet. He's sent from God. You can't question him. I've never done any of that, and I've always spoken against that. Even from Medic for Christ in the very beginning, I felt he was giving him too much attention, too much praise. And to me, it felt like it was wrong, and I've spoken out about that from day one. I'm talking about when Patience B was still on the scene talking about Joshua. From back then, I was talking about my red flags with Joshua. So I'm not sure, I watched his video recently. The very first one he did, I believe it was the first one, before the Sent Twins. I think he did the phone call interview with that brother who has Christians come on and talk about their supernatural experiences. And I was listening to that, and for the most part, I trust Joshua. I'm just going to be honest. I do trust him. I don't know 100% if he saw Jesus or anything, but I get good vibes. I don't get bad like I get from the other prophets. And again, Joshua's getting all this hate. And I understand. First of all, I don't think we should be hating Christians, obviously. But I understand the criticism. But it's interesting to me that he's getting that and all the other prophets are getting it a pass from a lot of the same people. Why? All these prophets have been wrong. Right? Most of these prophets haven't been right about anything. But they're the prophets, they're getting all kinds of passes, and it's just like, oh yeah, Brandon Biggs and Troy Black and this guy, that guy, this lady. Yeah, they're prophets. What? Why? Where's the proof? Where's the evidence? What have they prophesied that has come true? Crickets. Right? To me, they're obvious false prophets. I'm sorry, Lord, if that's wrong. If they're your prophets, forgive me, Lord. But I'm allowed to use my discernment and test the spirits. I'm supposed to do that. I've done that with Joshua. I've not found that, he's definitely a false prophet. Because every date that has passed, it's never been God said this would happen and it didn't happen. It's more, I jumped the gun and said, you'll be raptured in days, not weeks. Because I thought it was, as you guys know, right? 14, 15 will pass, 16, 17 will be the rapture. So he thought it was October at first. God didn't say it was October. Do you see what I'm saying? So for me, every explanation that Joshua has given is plausible to me. Now, there are people who follow Joshua, or I don't like to say that, but who believe in Joshua, who have explanations that I do not agree with, and I think are ridiculous, and I don't subscribe to those. Okay? Those brothers and sisters are allowed to do whatever they want. They're allowed to believe in Joshua. I don't. Right? So I recognize that a lot of that stuff is a bit over the top and to be not plausible and not a good explanation. So as you guys have heard, I've given an example, right? When people say that the rapture happened spiritually, but we're waiting for it physically, I do not accept that, and I probably will never accept that explanation. I think that's a total cop-out for me. So I get where people are coming from. Again, you have freedom to do that. It wasn't a lie, but I did change my mind. I'll admit that. I changed my mind about it. I thought July 11th was the only day of the game, so if July 11th happens, obviously he was wrong, right? That's why I was saying that. That was obvious, because that's the last window. However, new information has come to light, right? And guys, I'm just searching for the truth. Okay? I'm open to things. I just want to know the truth. I'm not afraid to say, hey, I changed my mind. I was wrong. I've been wrong about many things. So new information come to light. What is that? The World Cup is 39 days. And I remember Steve Campanelli was talking about that. Oh, Joshua will probably say the rapture will happen somewhere in there, that it won't finish. And I was thinking, oh, well, I didn't even know it was multiple days. But okay, that makes sense. And to me at first, it felt like that would be a push can down the road because he said it wouldn't happen. Same reaction that a lot of people are having that now that I'm saying that. However, logically speaking, especially if, and I wish Joshua would come out and say this, did God say to him, I'm going to cut it short? Maybe he heard both. That's what it seems like in that first interview, the way he's talking about it. He's like, God told me there will be no World Cup in 2026. I'm going to cut it short. That's the exact words that Joshua said. Now, a lot of us missed that, and it seems he even missed it. And somebody posted a post he made about it being cut short, and they said in the post, has Joshua forgotten? Maybe he needs to remember that he even said this himself, that it would be cut short. So I'm open to the idea that God will cut short the World Cup and that it will not come to its completion, its fruition, which is the actual World Cup that is given to the winner. Like I said, I'm not a soccer fan. I'm learning this stuff. I didn't know that. Essentially, you could blame this on me not being a soccer fan and not knowing about the World Cup, that it was multiple days. Which is why I said originally I'd be done on June 11th. Right? So now it's changed. New information. I've changed my mind. Right? A cult. If I'm in a cult, that means I don't question the leader. I would worship the leader as God. I don't worship Joshua. I question him all the time. I just did in this video. I've never said he's a prophet. I've never said he's a false prophet because I don't know. It's still in play, guys. It's for me, it's still in play. For you, you might be like, dude, that's ridiculous. He obviously said there'd be no World Cup. Now you're telling me there's going to be a World Cup, but it's not going to finish. That's silly. I get it. I hear you guys. And you don't have to believe in Joshua. And again, it's not even about believing in Joshua. It's just, for me, it was never about him as a person. It was about the information that was given to him, or the information that he was presenting, right? So essentially, I don't even care, in a way, like, I don't care if Jesus spoke to him or not. If he, like, let's say he didn't say Jesus spoke to him and he just said, I think that the rapture will happen before the World Cup because of some calendar, some kind of number. Let's say Repo Man came out and said it. I would be open to it. I'd be like, you know what? That makes sense. That's what I do. I listen to different Watchmen channels. The dates that they're putting through, for me, calendars, numbers, that's the main thing for me. And numbers, not so much with like, I saw a number on a license plate and stuff like that. Because I've had that too, but I don't rely on that too much. But when it comes to, Israel being 78 now, the 6,000 years, the 2,000 years since Christ, all that stuff, that is convincing to me. So all that stuff was in Joshua's message. So for me, it's still in play. He says that the tribulation started. It's just being cut short. It's an explanation that is somewhat plausible to me. So I'm not shutting it down yet. I just wanted to address that with you guys. Look, if you guys aren't into Joshua, I get it. Like I've said multiple times, like in live streams and stuff, I totally get it. I understand. I mean, for me, guys, all the way back to when I was doing interviews and live streams with Brother Rick at Church Reality Check, he was saying to me, when would you admit that Joshua was a false prophet and when would you let go of it? Right? And the initial thing was, well, if September 23rd and 24th pass, obviously, I'm pretty sure I would give it up. But there could be an explanation such as the calendars. I said that right off the bat. The calendars could be off. So the calendar stuff was a good explanation for me. Now, again, some people take that calendar stuff too far for me. And I'm like, no, that to me is not plausible. Right? But I also said to him, but also, really, the prophecy goes all the way out to the World Cup in June. Because that was the first thing that he got. So I've been saying that from the beginning, that it always reached this far for me. And now understanding that it's not just a one-day deal. Well, I mean, what are the chances that the rapture could happen by July 17th? Extremely high, right? So you might say, well, he was a false prophet and what he said was not what he's changing the story. Okay, I'm just looking to get raptured. I'm just looking for dates. I'm excited about it. You know what I mean? And the scenarios that he was giving, they seem plausible to me. And I hope it happens. I hope there is a rapture before that. So if July 17th happens and there's no war, I'm again, I can't say 100% like, I'm totally done with Joshua. I'm pretty sure I'd be done. I can't think of an explanation at this point that would keep me going on that. Because what are you going to say? It's the World Cup next year? The calendar is a year off. To me, that's like, all right, at that point, but again, guys, I can't predict the future, even with myself, right? So I at this point, I say, well, I think I'd be done by then. But again, I always say, who knows? But who knows? Because another date might come up, another number might come up, and some more explanations that make sense. I'm a watchman. I'm an end times Christian. I realized that we're in the end times as soon as I was saved. Even before I was saved, it's part of what got me saved. And I felt that God was telling me, hey, we're in the end times. let's get moving. You just made it in the nick of time. And I always believed in post-trib. So I was looking for the Antichrist. So that was my focus. And I knew who the Antichrist was because I was a Seventh-day Adventist, and they believe that the Pope is the Antichrist, and it's our job to warn everybody about it. And they believe that Sunday worship, by law, a Sunday law, will be the mark of the beast. And our job is to go tell people not to do that. So that's what I was focusing on. Once I understood free grace, that I'm saved through the grace of God through my faith only, not of works, then I started understanding dispensationalism. And then, lo and behold, I started believing a pre-trib rapture, which I didn't before. Honestly, guys, for 4 years as a Christian, I was like, what? There's no rapture. You guys are just trying to escape. All that stuff that I hear people say now. Then I started believing in the rapture. Then I started looking into these things. I already knew about the feast days. I already knew about Feast of Trumpets. And I already knew a lot about the rapture already because of what other people had told me they believed. So now, I'm not super huge into dates. Honestly, after July, I don't really see any big dates. I mean, within that July window with the World Cup, from my understanding, is the Feast of New Wine, which is the feast day that everybody points to after Pentecost. After that, as far as big watch days, I feel that I'm going to be not really convinced by many of them until September 23rd and 24th. So it's not like I'm jumping on every single date. There's a lot that I'm not I don't really feel that one. But again, everything that Joshua has put out and said and explanations, maybe not everything, but most of the main ones for me had made sense. Now, that said, to be honest, I listened to that first interview where he was talking about his encounter. So when I was watching that, there were some things that he was saying that part of me was making me think, maybe he is grifting. Maybe he did just make this up. I've heard those explanations. I spoke with Brother Chris, or Brother Rick over there, Reality Check. He believes that. I watch Brother Mugambi, his videos. His whole thing is to talk bad about Joshua and how Joshua is wrong. I listen to everything he puts out. I'm open to Joshua being wrong. I'm open to, I listen to everything Medic said about it. I'm not sure. The window is still open for me. Now, once that July 17th passes, I'm pretty sure I'm done. I can't think of any explanation that would make sense, would be plausible. So, going back to some things that I was thinking when I was listening to that video, it did seem a little bit like Joshua might have been just making it up. And one of the things that made me think that was, he said, what God told him, and then he claimed that, he said, I didn't know anything about the rapture at the time. I didn't know anything about feast days. Right? Then he says, and then I looked into the feast days, but then after that he says, well, I knew about the rapture. It's like he kind of contradicted himself. I can't remember the exact words right now. But I caught it, and I was like, At first you said you didn't know about the rapture. Then you're saying you did. So which was it? But again, there can be an explanation for that. Many of us have heard about the rapture in general. We may not know a lot about it, but most Christians know about the rapture. So, go back to my first video. I've been talking about the red flags with him. First of all, I know he didn't test the Spirit. That's a big red flag for me. People asked him that. I think the Sent Twins asked him, did you test the Spirit? And his response was, if you meet with Jesus, you won't test him either. To me, that's a bad response. So that could be that, some demonic spirit came to him and said it was Jesus and gave him this false information. Why? People think just to mislead the church. To me, that's not if a demon was going to show up, I think they'd do something a little more harmful, talking about a day that people get excited for and then it passes. It's I'm not really convinced that that's so demonic. That's what the devil would do. This is the devil behind Joshua. I don't believe that stuff. I actually still believe the opposite, that God was behind it, even if it does pass. Because again, it gets people thinking and talking about the rapture. Yeah, a day passed. Okay. I understand if people gave up stuff and if they're suicidal after, that's bad. That's not good. But to me, that's less so about looking at a date and more so about, other things, mental health, what is the person dealing with? I get it. A lot of us just don't want to be here. And so, and again, I've always said, If people are promising a date, and that's one thing I criticize Joshua about, that 1,000,000% thing, that to me wasn't good. And when Daniel Chung does that, that's not good. I think that's wrong. We shouldn't be doing that because you don't know for sure. And then it passes, and then there's no repentance. There's no, hey, I'm sorry. This is what I got wrong. I mean, he does say what he got wrong, but a lot of times it's just, here's the new date. Here's the new date. That's not good. So that's why for me, I've never ever said, 1,000,000,000% it's going to happen on this day. I don't believe, because I don't know. The difference is these people think God is speaking to them, and I don't feel that way. I'm just trying to figure this out as a believer down here, doing the best we can. So, those were some red flags. We have to test the spirits. The way Joshua talked about himself as a prophet, that was a red flag for me. And this might be a challenging video for you guys because the pro-Joshua people are probably like, well, why are you talking bad about Joshua? And then the anti-Joshua people are like, why do you believe in it? So it's, again, guys, I'm in the middle. I don't know. I'm waiting. I'm waiting and watching. I saw somebody saying that in the comments. They said, for a Christian to be like laughing at another Christian or criticizing them for waiting for a day and then it passes, it's in his belief. He says that's not Christian behavior in my belief. We shouldn't be laughing at other believers or making fun of them, obviously, or anything. Like, I don't even think there should be criticism for people who are waiting for a day. Yes, if they're saying this is going to happen and you should sell your house, that's bad. And again, even if they say it's going to happen, I don't think they should even be doing that. But for the people who waited for it and watched, like it's like the Seventh-day Adventists when they were looking in 1843 and then 44. It's one of my favorite movies, Tell the World, about the Seventh-day Adventist movement. And it was a bunch of people from a lot of different denominations coming out of their churches and joining together and looking for the coming of Christ. They believed, based on their interpretations from the book of Daniel, from William Miller's, who created it or figured it out. They believed that the second coming was in 1843 and 1844. And it seemed to be a movement of God. Now, you could say it was demonic. I'm not convinced of that. Now, the church became something else. I'm not talking about the church. I'm talking about that original movement. It was before the Seventh-day Adventists had a name. They weren't an organized church yet. It was just a bunch of people who believed the second coming was happening. And they started changing their lives and living for Christ and believing and getting people saved and preaching. And, a lot of them did give up their homes and they started preaching the gospel. For me, that is never a bad thing. So when it doesn't happen, when Christians come and ridicule them and say, you stupid, or you silly, or, this was a bad thing and you're evil and or maybe not you, but like you're led by a false spirit. It's like, okay, I get it. You're free to do that. That's not, to me, it never made sense to me, right? Why are you mocking somebody for looking for the coming of Christ? Even if they're wrong, even if their date was totally wrong and, they saw a license plate or all these different things that people are coming up with. Okay, and at the same time, I could say I don't agree with what they're saying. I think they're taking it too far. And to me, I could even say that's a bit ridiculous. I think that's ridiculous, the connections they're making. And you might think that's making fun. That might be going too far. But for me, it's talking about what they believe. But I'm not going to say man, you guys are so stupid to believe that. And now you're looking at another date. What is wrong with you? Again, you're free to do that. But I'm just saying, for me, I never understood that. Okay, it passed. Okay, we're looking the next day. Again, it's like people believe in imminency. Well, then it could be any day. Well, then what's the problem if I say June 23rd next year, or June 11th this month? I think the rapture could happen. What's the problem? If you believe it can happen any day, well, why couldn't it happen that day? I don't know. It's interesting. People say, no, I know it's not going to happen that day. Why? Well, because you said it would, and the Bible says no man is the day of the hour. So you literally think I have that much power that I'm going to change God's mind. He was going to do a rapture on that day, but because one person thought it might be that day and I said it out loud, now he says, oh, I'm not going to do it now. I don't believe that and I never will. My mom said that to me recently. She said, I heard that if anybody says the date that they'll change it. And I had seen that in my comments also. I said, I saw that in my comments, Mom. I said, that's not biblical at all. That's basically saying that we have power to change God's mind. No, he has the date. We're guessing down here. That verse, no man knows the day of the hour, as you can see from that logic, it's getting blown way out of proportion. in my view, in some ways, it's doing more harm than good in a lot of cases, because in some cases, not all, but it's making some people say, well, I'm not interested. And to me, that's the parable where Jesus says, hey, don't let me catch you unawares. Then it'll come like you on a thief in the night. Then you won't know the hour that I come. It seems there's a shift in the New Testament after Paul, where it is that we will know and we will be watching and we should be watching. When the apostles were asking Jesus, hey, when are you going to bring your kingdom in? He said, it's not for you to know. It's not for you. It's not for your time right now. But is it for our time now that we're like literally at the very end? I think it might be. I think it might be for us. And all in all, we have freedom to do what we feel called to do. So, those are some issues I have with Joshua. Again, like when he talks about his prophet status, to be honest, that gave me a red flag. Like, I don't like that. The way he talks about, like, I don't know, like the way he kind of, for me, just, and I could be wrong, I feel like he was making too much importance of himself in his story when he told his story, especially on Medic for Christ's podcast. Now, we all have pride. We all have, that could just be whatever. Or I could be misperceiving. Maybe it wasn't pride. Maybe it was his faith in God, but I took it as his faith in himself, right? So when Mike Winger watches Joshua's videos, he'll see him smile and go, look at that smug smile. Look how smug he is. You don't know what he's smiling about, right? It's like when O.J. Simpson walks into the courtroom and he's smiling, people immediately think, oh man, look at him, how guilty he is. Look at he's smiling. Well, you don't know why he's smiling. Maybe he's smiling because he knows this is a joke. I didn't do it. Which I believe OJ's innocent. Believe it or not. If you really look into that, that's a whole other thing. But you see what I'm saying? It could be our perception is off. Or he could just be a flawed human being like everybody else. A prophet is not perfect. So even if what I'm saying is correct, let's say he was maybe too much in pride about his story, about the mother named me this, and ever since I was a kid, because to me that is a red flag. Because I grew up, or I was in this cult, and they have these gurus, and that's always what they say. I was born special, right? T.L. Swan says the same thing. Ever since I was a child, I was seeing ghosts and blah, blah, blah. And then they take that as that means they're special. I've been seeing ghosts ever since I was a kid, too. I've seen aliens. I talked to aliens. I've talked to ghosts. Ghosts have talked to me. I've seen demons. I don't think that makes me a prophet. It actually, there's other explanations for that, right? So to take that out, like Joshua, for me, was doing a little bit of that. Not too much. But for me, when he told his story. But again, all of us can get into that. Somebody says, tell your story. Is it going to be 100% glorifying God, or am I going to glorify myself a little bit? Am I going to, I don't know, talk about, at the time I was in a band and we got pretty big, even that, just that little thing, I was touring, I toured the East Coast with my band, It feels good to say that. You're like, I'm kind of proud of that, So nobody's perfect. Look, guys, I love all you guys. I'm open to all ideas. Obviously some things are more plausible for everybody. And look, we're all individual. This is the nature of humanity. We're never going to agree about everything 100% ever. I mean, it's just how God made people. We're just individual. We have different thoughts, and it's just the nature. So I get if you're done with Joshua. I get if you're open to this explanation of this window of time till July 17th. And ultimately, we're all free to believe what we want. We have that freedom in Christ. Thank God for that. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. Love you guys. Keep coming back. Jesus loves you. Let's go. Let's go home soon. World Cup starts Thursday. Thursday to July 7th. For me, it's a window. It's a window for a potential rapture, and I really hope it happens then, and it would make sense. I've been feeling a summer rapture makes sense. Other people say, nope, it's definitely fall this year. A lot of people talk about 2026 in general, and some of them say, nope, it's fall. Okay, could be. I'm hoping for sooner than later, guys. Love you guys so much. Keep coming back. Peace.